Captain Jake Morrison stood in front of the mirror in his small quarters aboard the USS Horizon. He adjusted his uniform one more time and tried to calm his nerves. Today was the day he would meet real aliens for the first time. Not just any aliens, but the queen of an entire star system. Jake was 34 years old and had been exploring space for over 10 years. He had seen amazing planets, strange stars, and incredible sights that most humans would never see. But he had never met another intelligent species before. The closest he had come was finding old ruins on dead planets. The Zephyrians were different. They were very much alive and very advanced. Their ships were bigger and faster than anything humans had built. Their technology was hundreds of years ahead of Earth's best science. When they had sent a message asking for a meeting, every government on Earth had been excited and nervous at the same time. Amy Foster knocked on Jake's door. She was the ship's expert on alien life and had been studying everything they knew about the Zephyrians for months. Amy was smart, careful, and always prepared. She was also one of Jake's closest friends. "Captain, we need to go over the rules one more time," Amy said as she entered his quarters. She carried a tablet full of notes and looked worried. Jake sighed. "Amy, we've been through this 100 times. I know what to do. Be polite, don't touch anything, and let the diplomats handle the talking." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Amy replied. "You have a habit of saying whatever comes to your mind. The Zephyrians don't understand jokes or casual comments. They take everything very seriously." Ben Carter joined them in the hallway. He was the ship's expert on alien cultures and had spent weeks learning about Zephyrian society. Ben was quiet and thoughtful, the opposite of Jake's outgoing personality. "The captain will be fine," Ben said, though he didn't sound completely sure. "Just remember, Jake, they see words as binding agreements. Don't make any comments about their appearance or customs unless you really mean it." The three of them walked to the transport bay where a small shuttle waited to take them to the space station. The meeting was being held on neutral ground, a large station that belonged to neither humans nor Zephyrians. Representatives from both sides would meet there to discuss possible friendship between their peoples. As they flew toward the station, Jake looked out the window at the Zephyrian ships. They were beautiful in a way that human ships were not. Where human vessels were blocky and practical, the alien ships curved like works of art. They seemed to flow through space rather than push through it. "Incredible," Jake whispered. "Wait until you see them in person," Amy said. "The Queen is supposed to be over 8 feet tall." The space station was huge, bigger than any structure humans had ever built in space. It had been constructed by an even older alien race that no longer existed. Now it served as a meeting place for different species to conduct business without fighting. When their shuttle docked, Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was it. This was the moment that could change the future of humanity. If the meeting went well, humans might gain powerful allies among the stars. If it went badly, they might make dangerous enemies. The station's corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans. Strange lights cast colorful shadows on the walls, and the air smelled different from the recycled atmosphere on human ships. Jake had never felt so small or so far from home. They reached the main meeting room, and Jake got his first look at the Zephyrians. There were 6 of them, but his attention immediately focused on their queen. She was indeed over 8 feet tall, with skin that looked like it was made of blue crystal. She had 4 arms instead of 2, and her large violet eyes seemed to see everything at once. Queen Lyra Vex moved with incredible grace. Every gesture she made seemed planned and perfect. She wore robes that shimmered with their own light, and a crown that looked like it had been carved from a single star. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful or so alien. The human delegation approached slowly. The lead diplomat, a serious man named Robert Stone, began the formal introductions. He had practiced his words many times and spoke in the careful way that diplomats always used. "Your Majesty," Robert said with a deep bow, "we are honored to meet with you and your people. We hope this meeting will be the beginning of friendship between our species." Queen Lyra responded in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality that no human voice could match. "We also hope for understanding between our peoples. We have watched your species with interest as you began to explore the stars." The formal speeches went on for several minutes. Jake tried to pay attention, but he found himself watching the Queen's movements instead. She had a way of gesturing with all four arms that reminded him of a dancer. It was hypnotic and beautiful. When the formal part of the meeting ended, the Queen demonstrated a traditional Zephyrian greeting. It involved a complex series of hand movements that told a story about peace and friendship. Each gesture had meaning, and the whole dance took several minutes to complete. Jake watched in fascination as the Queen performed the greeting perfectly. Her four arms moved in patterns that seemed impossible for any human to copy. The grace and skill she displayed were incredible. Without thinking, Jake stepped forward and spoke. The words came out before he could stop them, the way his casual comments always did. "Your Majesty, that was amazing," he said with genuine admiration. "You move so beautifully. With grace like that, you'd make a cute wife." The moment the words left his mouth, Jake knew he had made a terrible mistake. The entire room went silent. Every Zephyrian froze in place as if time had stopped. Amy grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt, and Ben made a small choking sound. Queen Lyra's violet eyes went wide with surprise. Her four arms stopped moving completely. She stared at Jake for what felt like forever, though it was probably only a few seconds. The silence stretched on until Jake thought he might suffocate from the tension. Then, in her musical voice that now trembled slightly, Queen Lyra spoke three words that would change everything. "I accept." The Zephyrian delegation began talking excitedly among themselves in their own language. The human diplomats looked like they might faint. Amy's grip on Jake's arm tightened even more, and Ben sat down hard in the nearest chair. Jake stood frozen, slowly realizing that his casual joke had somehow become something much more serious. He looked at the alien queen, who was now surrounded by her advisors, and wondered what he had just gotten himself into. The meeting that was supposed to establish friendship between two species had suddenly become something entirely different. And it was all because Jake Morrison couldn't keep his mouth shut. The emergency meeting aboard the USS Horizon lasted 3 hours. Jake sat at one end of the conference table while every senior officer shouted at him. Admiral Lisa Hayes appeared on the main screen from Earth, her face red with anger. "Morrison, do you have any idea what you've done?" the Admiral demanded. "The Zephyrian Council is treating your comment as an official marriage proposal. They think you want to marry their queen." Jake rubbed his temples where a headache was building. "Admiral, it was just a compliment. I was trying to be friendly. How was I supposed to know they would take it seriously?" Dr. Helen Martinez joined the video call from Earth's capital. She was the government's top expert on alien cultures and looked very worried. "Captain Morrison, the Zephyrians don't have casual conversation the way we do. Every word they speak has specific meaning. When you commented on the Queen's suitability as a wife, they interpreted it as a formal declaration." Amy paced back and forth behind Jake's chair. She had been his friend for years, but right now she looked ready to strangle him. "I told you to be careful. I warned you not to make personal comments." "I was complimenting her dancing," Jake protested. "It was beautiful. I was just being nice." Ben Carter sat across from Jake with a pile of books and electronic tablets. He had been researching Zephyrian marriage customs since the meeting ended. His findings were not encouraging. According to their laws, Ben explained, when someone comments on another person's fitness as a mate, it's considered a binding proposal. The Queen's acceptance makes it official under their legal system. Robert Stone, the lead diplomat, looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few hours. "The Zephyrian ambassador contacted me an hour ago. They're already making preparations for what they call a unity ceremony. They think this is a political marriage to unite our species." Admiral Hayes leaned forward on the screen. "The President is meeting with the Security Council right now. This situation could affect Earth's relationship with every alien species in this sector. The Zephyrians are powerful, Morrison. They have allies and enemies throughout the galaxy." Jake slumped in his chair. He had joined the space service to explore new worlds and meet new people. He had never imagined that a simple compliment could cause an interstellar incident. "What happens if I just say no?" Jake asked. "Can't I explain that it was a misunderstanding?" Dr. Martinez shook her head. "It's not that simple. The Zephyrians consider a rejected marriage proposal to be a serious insult. If you back out now, They might see it as an act of hostility from the entire human race. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime, Queen Lyra Vex was having her own difficult conversations. She stood in her private chambers looking out at the crystal spires of her capital city. Her chief advisor, General Crix Valor, was not happy about recent events. "My queen, this human knows nothing about our ways," General Valor said angrily. "He is from a primitive species that has barely learned to travel between stars. How can you bind yourself to such a creature?" Lyra turned from the window to face her advisor. General Valor was old and had served her family for decades. His 4 arms were crossed in a gesture of disapproval, and his orange eyes flashed with concern. "Crix, when was the last time someone spoke to me without calculating their words for political advantage?" Lyra asked calmly. "When did anyone last address me as simply a person rather than a queen?" "That is exactly the problem," Valor replied. "He treated you like a common person instead of showing proper respect for your position." Lyra walked to her desk where reports from the human encounter waited for her review. The captain's words kept playing in her mind. He had not been trying to gain favor or make political connections. He had simply seen something beautiful and expressed his appreciation. "Perhaps that is what makes his words valuable," she said thoughtfully. There was no deception in his voice, no hidden agenda. Just honest admiration. Back on the space station, Jake was allowed to return to his quarters while the diplomats tried to figure out what to do next. Amy and Ben came with him, both looking exhausted from the day's events. "Maybe this isn't completely terrible," Ben said, trying to sound optimistic. "The Zephyrians are an advanced civilization. An alliance with them could be very beneficial for humanity." Amy gave him a hard look. "Ben, we're talking about Jake marrying an alien queen. This isn't a trade agreement." "I'm right here," Jake reminded them. "And I'm not marrying anyone. There has to be a way out of this mess." Over the next week, messages flew back and forth between Earth and Zephyr Prime. Politicians, diplomats, and scientists all had opinions about what should happen. Some wanted to use the situation to gain political advantage, while others wanted to find a way to escape the marriage contract without offending the Zephyrians. Jake found himself confined to his quarters while everyone else made decisions about his future. He was allowed to read reports and watch news broadcasts, but he couldn't participate in the discussions. It was frustrating and boring. The news media on Earth was having a field day with the story. Headlines screamed about the space captain's alien bride and the marriage that could start a war. Jake's picture appeared on every news channel, usually next to an artist's drawing of Queen Lyra. Amy visited him every day, bringing food and updates on the negotiations. She was still angry about the situation, but her anger was starting to turn into concern for her friend. "The government is split," she reported during one visit. "Half of them want to go through with the marriage for political reasons. The other half want to find a way out before we offend the Zephyrians too much." "What about what I want?" Jake asked. "Apparently that's not important," Amy replied bitterly. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game now." Ben brought more disturbing news about Zephyrian culture. "I've been studying their history," he said. "They haven't had a royal marriage in over 50 years. The queen has refused every suitor for decades. Her acceptance of your proposal has caused quite a stir in their society." Jake stared out the small window of his quarters at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was an alien world where a queen was waiting for him to make good on a promise he never intended to make. The weight of responsibility was crushing. "What kind of person is she?" Jake asked. "The queen, I mean." Ben consulted his notes. "By all accounts, she's intelligent, fair, and well respected by her people. She's ruled for 30 years and has never shown interest in marriage or having children. Her advisors have been pushing her to find a mate to secure the royal bloodline." "So I accidentally solved a political problem for her," Jake said. "It looks that way," Amy agreed. "The question is whether you're willing to solve a political problem for Earth too." That night, Jake lay awake thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. A week ago, his biggest worry had been writing reports about mineral surveys on dead planets. Now he was at the center of an interstellar crisis that could affect the future of humanity. After 2 weeks of being trapped in his quarters while others decided his fate, Jake made a decision that surprised everyone. He requested permission to speak directly with Queen Lyra. The diplomats thought he was crazy, and Admiral Hayes initially refused to allow it. "Morrison, you've caused enough trouble," the Admiral said during their video call. "The last thing we need is for you to make this situation worse." But Dr. Martinez convinced her to reconsider. "Admiral, maybe direct communication is our only option. The formal diplomatic channels aren't working. Both sides are getting more frustrated every day." Jake was given permission for one conversation with the Queen. The communication would be monitored by both human and Zephyrian officials, but he would be allowed to speak freely. As he sat in the communication room preparing for the call, Jake felt more nervous than he had during his first space mission. The screen flickered to life, and Queen Lyra appeared. She was not in her formal robes this time, but wore simpler clothing that somehow made her seem more approachable. Her violet eyes looked tired, and Jake realized that she was probably dealing with as much pressure as he was. "Captain Morrison," she said in her musical voice, "I have been hoping we could speak privately about our situation." "Your Majesty," Jake began, then stopped. "Actually, if we're going to talk honestly, can I just call you Lyra? This whole formal thing is part of the problem." A small smile appeared on her crystalline features. "I would like that. And you may call me Lyra. I believe your people would call this conversation getting to know each other." Over the next hour, they talked about their lives and their worlds. Jake learned that Lyra had become queen when she was very young after her parents died in an accident. She had spent 30 years making difficult decisions for billions of people, always putting her duty above her personal desires. "I have never had what your people call a casual conversation," Lyra explained. "Every word I speak is analyzed for political meaning. Every gesture is interpreted as policy. Your comment at our meeting was the first genuine compliment I have received in years." Jake felt a pang of sympathy for her. "That sounds incredibly lonely. Don't you have any friends?" "Queens do not have friends," Lyra replied sadly. "We have advisors, subjects, and political allies. But friendship requires equality, and I am not equal to anyone in my society." Jake told her about his life as a space explorer, about the freedom of traveling between stars and discovering new worlds. He described Earth's cities and forests, its oceans and mountains. Lyra listened with fascination, asking questions about things that seemed ordinary to Jake but amazing to her. "Your people choose their own paths in life," she observed. "They can marry for love, pursue careers that interest them, travel for pleasure. Such freedom is unknown on my world." "But you're the queen," Jake said. "Can't you do whatever you want?" Lyra laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am the least free person on Zephyr Prime. Every decision I make affects millions of lives. Every choice has consequences that ripple through our entire civilization." They talked about the marriage situation and the pressure both of them were feeling from their governments. Jake learned that Lyra's advisors had been pushing her to marry for decades, hoping she would produce an heir to secure the royal bloodline. "Your accidental proposal solved a political problem that has been troubling my council for years," Lyra admitted. "But I do not wish to trap you in a marriage you never intended. What if there was a way to make this work for both of us?" Jake asked. "Some kind of arrangement that gives our governments what they want while still being fair to both of us?" Permission for daily conversations was granted after the first call went well. Jake found himself looking forward to these talks with Lyra. She was intelligent and thoughtful, with a sense of humor that surprised him. Despite being from different species, they found common ground in their shared experiences of duty and responsibility. Lyra told him about Zephyrian art and music, about their ancient history and scientific achievements. Jake shared human stories and jokes, teaching her about concepts like sarcasm and irony that didn't exist in her culture. "Your species finds humor in the most unexpected places," Lyra said during one conversation. "Yesterday you told me about something called dad jokes and I laughed for the first time in months." "Laughter is important," Jake replied. "It helps us deal with stress and connect with other people. Don't your people laugh?" "We express amusement, but not in the spontaneous way humans do. Everything is controlled and measured. Your casual approach to life is both fascinating and terrifying to my advisors." Meanwhile, Ben Carter had been working with Zephyrian scholars who had been sent to study human culture. Together, they discovered something interesting in ancient Zephyrian law. Marriage contracts could be modified through a process called unity clarification, where both parties could redefine the terms of their union. This could be the answer, Ben explained to Jake excitedly. You could propose a modified contract that creates a political alliance instead of a traditional marriage. Both governments get what they want, and you two don't have to worry about the personal aspects. But when Jake mentioned this option to Lyra during their next conversation, her response surprised him. "What if I do not wish to modify our contract?" she asked quietly. Jake was confused. "Lyra, you can't seriously want to marry someone you barely know from a different species." "I have been thinking about this every day since our first conversation," she replied. "Jake, I have ruled alone for 30 years, making every decision in isolation. I have never had someone speak to me as an equal, someone who sees me as Lyra rather than the queen." She paused, looking out what Jake assumed was a window on her world. When she continued, her voice was soft but determined. "Your species has something mine has lost. You speak from your hearts without calculating every word. You find joy in simple things and share that joy freely. You make connections with others based on genuine feeling rather than political advantage." "But Lyra," Jake protested, "you're talking about binding two entire civilizations together because of my stupid joke. That's a lot of pressure." "Perhaps. Or perhaps fate found a way to bring our peoples together when they needed each other most. My civilization is stagnating, Jake. We have become so focused on control and order that we have forgotten how to live. Your people could teach us about spontaneity and joy." Jake sat back in his chair, processing her words. Over the weeks of talking with her, he had come to respect and admire Queen Lyra. She was wise, kind, and carried an enormous burden with grace. The idea of helping her and her people was appealing, but the reality of interspecies marriage was still overwhelming. "What would this mean practically?" he asked. "Would I have to live on your world? Would I have to become some kind of prince?" "We would figure it out together," Lyra replied. "Both our peoples are adaptable. Perhaps we could create something new, a partnership that benefits everyone involved." That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lyra's words and the loneliness he heard in her voice. She wasn't just a queen dealing with political pressure. She was a person who had spent her entire adult life isolated by her responsibilities, and his casual comment had offered her a chance at genuine companionship. Amy found him in the observation lounge staring out at the stars. "You're thinking about saying yes, aren't you?" she said, sitting down beside him. Jake sighed. "Is it that obvious?" "To someone who's known you for 10 years, yes. You have that look you get when you're about to do something crazy that might actually be brilliant. Amy, she's amazing. Intelligent, funny, kind, and carrying the weight of an entire civilization on her shoulders. And she's interested in our culture, in the way we approach life. Maybe this could actually work." Amy was quiet for a long time, watching the stars with him. Finally, she spoke. "Jake, if you do this, you'll be making history. The first human to marry an alien, the first interspecies political alliance of this kind. It could change everything for both our peoples." "Or it could be a disaster that ruins everything," Jake replied. "Maybe," Amy agreed. "But knowing you, you'll find a way to make it work. You always do."